Hello my friends, it's the Game Boy Geek here. Today, we'll begin the first of 43 Martian days, known as Sols, with full scientific journeys and discoveries on Mars. Dust devils will blow you away. Anomalous magnetic zones will drag you into the black obscurity, and the riddles of the red planet will become more and more complicated with each Sol. Mars Expedition Sol 43 is a logic board game with scientific adventures in desert mazes. It's for 1 to 2 players. It takes between 5 minutes and 2 hours to play, depending on the scenario or Sol you've chosen and the number of players. It's for ages 8 and up, and it's published by Queencell. Now it's being crowdfunded right now, so I'm going to show you how the game works, and I'll see you on the other side. This is a crowdfunding preview, so all of the art and components you see here are not final. These are prototypes. To see all the most up-to-date art and components, check the link in the description of this video. Also, this is not an official rules video. This is just a high-level overview to give you an idea of how the game is played. Now, Mars Expedition Sol 43 is a logic board game. You can play with 1 or 2 players. With 1 player, it's a straight logic game. With 2 players, it adds some strategy with card play. Now, it's called Mars Expedition Sol 43 because there's 43 Sols. Sols is essentially a full day on Mars, and each of these is essentially a scenario. So I've placed a different amount of them here just to show you that each of these, they're going to start easy, and then they're going to slowly get harder and ramp up difficulty all the way to the last one, but they're all going to have different goals. For example, in Sol 1, you're going to want to return to the base using the shortest path. You're going to have a drone, and you're going to be trying to get back to the base. I'll show you how all this works in just a moment. Sometimes you'll be trying to take a picture of the terrain and such, or other things, and landing on the camera there. Sometimes you'll want to be collecting minerals. Sometimes you'll want to be doing a combination of things, like collecting minerals, taking a picture, and then returning to the base. Sometimes you'll want to push an aerographene here, and you try to push that into the base. And again, sometimes you'll be doing all sorts of different combinations of all these things, depending on the Sol that you've selected. Now, the other side of those Sol cards actually show you how to set it up. So this is one of those towards the beginning. And I'm just going to show you some of the main concepts of the game. So in this case, the goal was to basically return to the base. Here's where we start. Here's the base. In this case, this Sol just has a handful of different rocks out there, and they're going to somewhat obstruct you from getting there. Now, the way that the drone moves is in an S-curve. So if you think of it floating, it's going to go sort of like this, like that, like an S. Or from here, it can go like that, like an S. Another way to think of it is move one direction orthogonally, not diagonally, then perpendicular one way or the other, so to here or here, and then again go in that same first direction. So you go in one direction, you go perpendicular one, and then you go in that same direction. That's one way to think of it. So you could also go here, here, and here, for example. Now these rocks you can fly over, but you cannot land on them at the end of your movement, because again, these S moves always just move 3 spots in the directions that I've been showing you. So that's generally how the drones move. So if it was here, we could do our S movement like this, because it's not landing on the rock, or like this. Both of those are legitimate moves. But if, say, we started here, we could not go like this because we would end on this rock. We could not go here because we'd end on this rock, so we'd probably have to choose a different direction to try to reset where we're at. Now again, the object is to eventually land on the base in this one. Now again, I'm just showing you one drone. I'm going to get into the 2-player game with some of the strategy and the cards and such in just a moment, but right now I just want to cover some of the basics. Now in this specific Sol, the drone starts on the base, and it needs to go take a picture and return to the base. Here's where the picture needs to be taken. You need to land on this. You'll take that token, and then you'll need to get back to the base. Now, as before, there's rocks here. Remember, you can fly through them, but you can't land on them. But there are mountains here, here, and all around here. That's a rock. You can fly through that. These mountains you cannot land on or fly through. So they give you, it's a harder thing to navigate around. And also, all of these have the actual historical mountain there with some information about them. So for example, we already know we cannot fly in this direction or this direction, and if we go this way, we can't go here. So our first move either has to be here, 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 or here, 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 or here, here, here. So because of this, it's pushing you in a certain direction. Now in this Sol, you're starting at the base, and you're trying to get all the way to this mineral, which is an arsenopyrite, and then you're trying to get back. However, there is a tornado here, also known as a dust devil. In addition to this, there are the mountains, as we talked about earlier, and some rocks or stones. So let's talk a little bit about this tornado. Now this affects not only the square that it's in, but all of the surrounding squares. So basically all 9 of this grid, if you think of that way. So what's going to happen is, think of it, this thing is spinning. And so if we were to do a normal move, like we do our S-curves, we go here, here, and we would normally land here, but because I've touched the flow of this, it goes in an additional spot, and it's always on sort of that last little glide step there. So even if we started here, we can fly over the rocks. We can go here, here. Normally it would end here, but because we're on the tornado, it would go like that. Now if we were here and we were going to be going outside of the flow, remember this flow sort of is in all of these, it would just move like normal because you were starting on the outside of that flow and moving away from it. It wouldn't be affected. Now remember, we're trying to get this mineral and then get back to the base. So again, this is rocks. We could fly through this. And remember, anyway here, you're in that flow. So if we go here, 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 because of the flow, we would move here. Now again, this is the outskirts of this tornado. So if now we moved here, because we're moving out, we could then go there, pick this up, and then we have to work our way back to the base. And when you're in the flow, you can never be pushed off the board. If so, you couldn't do that movement. And remember, you can never land or move over mountains or land on your last movement on the rocks. Now in some souls, the tornado is actually going to move. So after a turn, it will say move like this. And then next time it will move like this, and then next turn it will start moving back like this. And so you'll have to time things. This is just to help you see where the tornado is going to go. You can still sort of fly over these. It's just to help show you where the tornado is going to be going in future turns, and you'll have to plan around that. Now in this soul, you need to push this aerographene to the base. Now what this is, it's an amazing element. It's not a mineral, metal, or liquid. It's basically air with shapes, and since you can't pick it up with the arm, you need to sort of push it with air. So you're going to need to sort of push this into the base there. Now let's say this is where we were. If you do a normal S-curve, you would be pushing it into the next logical spot like that. Or if you were here and you do an S-curve, you would be pushing it here, here, and then you'd be like that. Or let's say you were like this, you move here, you move there, and then you move here. So you're sort of just pushing it and you're trying to get it on there. Now these are affected by tornadoes and things like that as well, so that can complicate things. Now in this soul, you need to go take a picture of the terrain. And again, these are mountains blocking your way. You're gonna have to go all the way around here and get over here, and then get back to the base. You've got a moving tornado that's gonna be going like this from turn to turn. You got this base, but now you also have this interesting thing called an anomaly. Let's say we're here and we do our normal S-curve and we take the picture, we get to collect this, and now we're here. Now let's say we end up flying into this anomaly from the east. Now you'll notice that this anomaly, there's an anomaly for each specific soul or puzzle, and some of them have multiple anomalies depending on what side of the map you're on and such. But here it shows you 4 different gates. And so in this case, because we came in from the east, we'll come in from the east gate. Some of them don't even have gates on all of them. For example, if you're on 32, this should be coming in from the south, from the west, from the east. You cannot come into this from the north of the main map. So some of the anomalies are very different. But you're going to be coming into something like this. And now you're flying pretty much like normal. However, maybe you do something like this, where you go, up, to the left, and then up, just like that, and that's fine. However, if you ever end up on one of these spots that has a number, then it's going to suck you towards the center of this anomaly to the black hole. And if you get sucked all the way in, then you start back at the base. And that's the base of the main map, not the anomaly. So for example, if I went 1, 2, 3, this is a 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, I am sucked in. So I wouldn't want to do that, but you're trying to get to different parts of the gate and trying to get out of this. Because if you got out of it from the south, you're going to start your next turn on the main map to the south of there. So it's a puzzle if you're trying to figure out where to come out of and try to get there. So it's like a puzzle within a puzzle. Now future souls might have a 2x anomaly, where instead of it just being on one spot, it's on 4 of them. And as you can see, it's a lot more complicated. And in this one, you can only come in from the top left or the top right or the bottom left or the bottom right. You can't come in there from the east or the west because there's no gates on that side. So you can only enter it in certain spots. And then when you get there, as you can see, it gets a lot more complicated as to where you can go. And some of the furthest souls have a 3x3 grid of the anomaly. And as you can imagine, you can kind of enter from more different spots, but again, it's going to be an even more complicated puzzle. Now all of the souls can be played with 1 or 2 players. Here I'm showing you a new 1 and 2 players. They start, both drones from each player starts on the base there. And there's a couple things you're trying to do. Number 1, is you're trying to collect this specific mineral. This is the arsenopyrite. And you're also trying to push this aerographene to the base. And you're also trying to, once those two goals are done, you're trying to also land on the base. Now the soul will end when all the goals are completed and one of the two drones gets to the base. And you're going to be scoring points depending on this. Now when you get to the base after all the goals complete, that person gets a point. Now when you're getting these different types of minerals and such, each of those are going to be worth 2 points. If you're able to get a picture, that will also be 2 points. And if you're able to push this where it needs to go in the base, you're going to get 4 points. Now you can also keep a logbook of how many moves you've made. And the shortest drone flight path across the entire soul is worth 3 points. That's an optional rule. Now there's two huge gameplay differences in the two-player game. One is, you'll notice this compass here, and the white drone is going to go first, and they are going to roll this wind die. And this is going to push you in a specific direction. So for example, if the white rolled this, the wind was going to push them here, and you can always you can only move in the direction of the die if you can legally move there, of course. And then you do your normal move. And so the wind's going to be adding a variation of luck that you're going to have to plan around, so it's a little harder. If you roll this, it just definitely doesn't move you. For example, let's say the drone was here, and you got it north, and it can't go north. So it doesn't move, and you don't get to do a normal move. However, you can use these strategy cards, so let's talk about these. At the beginning of the game, each player is dealt 5 of these cards, and you can look at them, but you don't let your opponent see them. And you can use 1 card per turn, either before or after you've rolled the wind die. And there's 2 ways to get more cards. One is to complete one of the missions, and you'll get another one. Or if you roll the C, which is card on the wind die, you'd get another card. So if the wind die is rolled and you can't move because of what it does, you could still use a strategy card. Now again, you can use these before you roll the wind die, after you roll your wind die, or after you make your movement. Now, these do different things. You can only play 1 per turn. Recharging. Your batteries have been fully charged by the sun, and you can make an additional move, basically a +1 move. Nullification. The battery of your opponent suddenly discharged. The opponent skips a turn. Air barrier stops you from having to move with what this says, so you can wait till you get something that's really bad for you and then play that. You could use a modulator, which messes with the radio of the opponent, and you could place a mountain or stone where there really isn't one. It doesn't affect the player playing this, but it does affect the other player for 2 turns. But a wave shield helps protect the errors from this module. So for 2 of your turns, the modulator doesn't do anything. Now here are some other ones. The aerographene oddities. It allows that player to move that aerographene for 1 cell in any direction of their choice, but it takes 1 turn to do so. You can use the photon engine to shoot your drone way up over mountains and move over to the other side of the mountain. Now a chromatic lens will allow you to go back to a cell that you've already landed. It counts as a move, but of course in this case you need to have been keeping track of where you've been on the board, like with the logbook. Now the Einstein bridge allows you to go diagonally any number of cells until it encounters the first obstacle. And the tornado doesn't affect it. Pretty cool. The intersection move allows a player to move to an intersection of lines of the cell that they land on, so they're kind of like in between them. So it might be in between these 4 spots, and it doesn't matter what terrain that is. And then this allows them to start their next movement from one of the spots that's a legal spot that's next to it, like that. And generally speaking, that's how Mars Expedition Sol 43 works. Well, there you have Mars Expedition Sol 43. And as I showed in the overview, you'll either be playing a solo pure logic game, or 2 players adding even more strategy with card play at the right time. Now, if you'd like to see all the most up-to-date art and components and all the different pledge levels available, you can click the link below me in the description of this video. Now, that's going to take you directly to the crowdfunding project page, and I'm sure that Queen Cell would love your support.